Biden to quit race.
So this is Kirsty's last ever Newsnight. She has presented this programme for more than 30 years. So tonight, on our final show, it's time to ask her a few questions via the body of Jan Ravens. Kirsty, you've got such a great legacy of being this political and cultural icon in this country, and I really admire the fact that at the same time as all that, you've also managed to keep your life at home in another country, in Glasgow, and that's mostly to do, I think, with the Caledonian Sleeper train.
Well, the Caledonian Sleeper has actually been an absolute boon for my life. And actually, there was a rumour that I actually can keep it waiting while, you know, if I'm a bit late from the studio.
I've heard that you've held up the train.
I have, like Albert Finney in The Dresser, you know. I stand there, you know, at the platform going, "Stop that train!" But more on that story later.
I also heard the rumour that you were once asked to provide the voice for the announcements for the Caledonian Sleeper.
We did have a little trial run of me announcing the stations and so forth, but I have this habit of enlightening my consonants so much and sort of rushing over the words, and so I was saying, you know, if you're going to Aberdeen, you've got to go in the first 4 coaches, go to Fort William, please stay in the back. But of course everybody ended up in Dundee. It was an absolute disaster.
And so are you taking the Caledonian Sleeper home tonight?
Well, I can't actually take the Caledonian Sleeper home tonight because I have several trunks of Prada sweaters and Vivienne Westwood skirts, so I've hired a U-Haul van, so I'm going to be driving up the motorway tomorrow back home.
Okay.
And get bladdered tonight.
Good, glad to hear it. Thanks, Jan. I mean, Kirsty.
What are you going to do now?
Yeah, right. Well, now, there have been so many special moments over the years. Let's take a look at some of Kirsty's best bits.
You are a big figure, you are a big personality, and some in your own party would say that you're a complete control freak.
That's 1 minute to air, Newsnight.
Kirsty Wark is in Londonderry.
With its sectarian division and its bloody history, the mood of Derry tonight is as good a guide to any as to what people in Northern Ireland are feeling after this roller coaster week. This morning we're going to witness the symbolic start to a new chapter in Scotland's history, and indeed the history of the United Kingdom. Doesn't this underline the belief that Scots' views are not taken into account?
Absolute nonsense.
You have President Trump appropriating Rocket Man to poke fun at Kim Jong-un. What did you make of that?
I don't care.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Newsnight is here in Finland, Warsaw, Taipei, Belfast, Washington, Berlin, Sri Lanka, Scotland,
Boston. Kirsty's there.
Well, welcome to a very noisy convention hall in Boston, hence the fetching headphones.
Do you think peace in Burma is unattainable?
We can achieve political peace, if you like, national peace, but absolute peace will have to be worked at for himself or herself.
In the aftermath of the attacks, there was the idea that nothing would ever be the same again in culture and society, and that things would change for the better. You tried to counsel President Bush not to call it a war on terror.
I did.
You thought that was wrong.
I lost. He decided to call it that.
The only way that you could invade Iraq was if you were absolutely certain. The only legal basis was that you certainly had WMD, not an intention.
How many times have we been over this argument?
Good evening. Dunblane today suffered one of the most appalling acts of mass murder ever witnessed in this country. In the last hour, there are reports of many dead in Paris and several major suspected terror attacks in the city. Tonight, Bill Clinton speaks for the first time since Nelson Mandela's death.
When he smiled at you, if you looked in his eyes, you knew he was not just smiling, he was looking in your soul.
With some strong language, Newsnight, now on BBC Two, with Kirsty Wark.
Thank you.
Somebody talk to me, for Christ's sake!
Well, she's all you'd ever want. She's the kind that like to flaunt and take to dinner. Well, but she always knows her place. She's got style, she's got grace, she's a winner.
Tell me, your attitude to women.
My what?
Yes. Let's look at this image of the bikini-clad woman in a jet engine. Do you really think that's appropriate for an airline? Do you think that's the way to attract people to your airline?
I think there's many ways of attracting people to our airline. We do lots of different ads. I'm not responsible for all the ads that go out there. But if we
but you're responsible for the tone of the company. If a no deal looms, you'll do anything you can to avoid that.
I'm committed to making sure that we avoid no deal.
Even if that means resigning as a minister?
Kirsty, as I say, there's lots of moving parts at the moment. I'm just going to carry on trying to make my point in my words.
But you don't rule out resigning if you have to?
As I say, I'm going to wait and see.
Boris Johnson, in the ITV debate, consistently refused to rule out proroguing Parliament if he thought that was the only way to deliver Brexit. Is he right to do that?
So I myself don't believe any Prime Minister would choose to prorogue Parliament.
Today, Boris Johnson asked the Queen to prorogue Parliament. He's pulled a flanker. You talked about being at home as a teenager, desperately listening on the top 40 for your Beatles song and your Kinks song. So what was the Kinks song?
You really got me.
So what is your name?
Yorgos Kyriago Panayiotou is my real name.
And do you ever...
Snappy little pop name.
Do you ever pick up the phone and say, this is...
No.
No. For someone whose body has very much been part of their work, what do you think about your body now? Do you have a new respect for its resilience?
Well, I'm tough. I didn't know how tough I was. And when you've been through, like, what I went through, it's like being in a plane crash and getting up and walking away. And when that happens, you're so grateful for life, for every single moment.
When you see what is happening to women in Afghanistan, education and so forth, when you see what's happening in Iran, does it hurt your heart?
At my age? What hurt? It offends my sense of fairness and justice.
Prime Minister, indeed, you talked about having won an election throughout the United Kingdom in the last 3 elections. But in fact, the Tory vote has consistently gone down in Scotland in each election.
Yes, and I hope that it will go up in the next one.
Because of government restrictions, we cannot let you hear Mr McGuinness's voice. His words are read by an actor. I asked him why he had denied that he'd initiated the offer of peace.
There's not a person in the country who believes what John Major said tonight.
Is there any other job in the Cabinet you'd like to do apart from being Chancellor?
I'm not going to be drawn into that. I'm happy doing the job that I'm doing. I've had.
Come on. Would you like to be...
Tackling unemployment's been the big issue.
Would you like to be Prime Minister?
Kirsty.
So how about you? What about an ambassadorship to the US?
No. Thank you very much.
Would you do a deal with Theresa May?
No.
Are you sure that Jeremy Corbyn voted to remain?
Absolutely sure.
Has he told you that?
That's an absurd question.
Just time to go on with some bedtime reading. We'll be back tomorrow night. Until then, good night. I am now cooking, very quickly, some linguine with spicy tomato sauce and mussels.
Kirsty, you've been a legend in British journalism for more than 3 decades. Tough but fair and always exceptionally smart. I wish you the very best of luck, and I'm sure you'll carry on doing great things.
To say you are a broadcasting titan, obviously across the UK, but particularly here in Scotland, would be an understatement. It's hard to imagine that landscape without you. I had my very, very first interview experience with you when I was just 17 or 18 years old. I was in awe of you then, and it's fair to say that hasn't really changed.
We all owe a special thanks to Kirsty Wark, who's been a pathbreaker in British journalism. She's an interviewer who's asked the searching questions, a documentary maker whose originality has given us new insight into the big issues of the day, and always a broadcaster who enhanced our knowledge of current affairs. Thank you, Kirsty.
To finish these off, I'm going to add a little bit of tin tomatoes.
Kirsty, many congratulations on over 3 decades presenting Newsnight. You have questioned us, quizzed us, held us to account, and often terrified us. But a great record. Many congratulations. Now you're retiring, but you can always retire after a long career and then make a comeback. Best wishes. Well done with everything.
Brilliant. I'm going to put my linguine in here.
Hi Mum, congratulations on your last day at Newsnight. I know how hard it's going to be for you to leave the programme and the team that you love so much, but I'm so proud of you and the amazing career that you've had there. And thank you for being the best mum in the world alongside that.
Okay, and I'm going to mix this up in like so.
Mum, a huge congratulations on an incredible run of over 30 years at Newsnight. My entire life you've been on this programme and it's been such a pleasure to watch you work and such an inspiration to me and my sister.
Pop a little into the plate.
Working with Kirsty, the most important thing about her, I think, is her incredible enthusiasm. I mean, she really is the Scottish Tigger.
I am going to give Yung Chang a little linguine with mussels.
Oh,
spicy.
Of all the things I admire the most, it's the very gentle and conversational way that you can ask a difficult and pertinent question. You do that better than anyone. You've been an inspiration to a lot of us.
The entire team just adores you. You are the queen of Newsnight and we love you and we wish you well.
You are an incredible journalist, an amazing woman, and it was wonderful to find out that you are also a complete laugh. We are going to miss you.
And if that's left you lacking in festive cheer, you could take comfort in the return of everyone's favourite nanny on the big screen tonight. Sleep well. Good night.
Walk on by. Walk on by.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Mary Poppins. Well, I have to say that I have been issued with very, very severe instructions from the BBC bosses that I've got to hold it together right now.
All right.
But I do say what I'm going to do. I'm going to push my luck a little bit, Kirsty, and I'm going to tell you why your other family here at Newsnight and beyond love you and admire you so very much. There are about 1 million reasons why we think like that, but I'm just going to highlight 3 of them. So in the first place, what we saw in that film, you are a brilliant and a remarkable journalist. Your excitement every day is the excitement that you would have had on the day that you started in journalism. The second reason is that you have extraordinary pastoral care for young journalists. Every day that a young journalist starts on this programme, without fanfare, without fuss, Kirsty will walk up to them and say, what are your interests? How are you doing? Do keep in touch. And you walk around this building and people come up to you and say, do you work with Kirsty Wark? She's been so magnificent to me. And the final reason I'm going to mention is you have been the most incredible pioneer for women journalists. But let's just start and look at the first of those reasons, which is you're an absolutely brilliant journalist, Kirsty. Now, 20 years ago, you were dispatched by this programme across the Atlantic to cover the 2004 Democratic National Convention. It was a pretty lacklustre presidential campaign for John Kerry, but you found some history.
Yeah, oh God. 2004, Boston, we were going to hear from this young Illinois senator who'd been asked to make the keynote address in support of John Kerry.
What happened to him, man?
And there was Barack Obama, and it was like electrifying. I mean, watching people watch him.
I was here that night.
I mean, it's quite, it was extraordinary.
It was incredible,
wasn't it? You know, I mean, yeah.
He's no Kirsty Wark, though, is he?
Yeah,
He's
no
Kirsty Wark. Should we let's just have a look at what the young Barack Obama, what he said.
Yeah.
There is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America.
And, you know, he said, you know, the true genius of America, a faith in simple dreams and insistence in small miracles. It was great oratory. And now when you think what's going on right now, you think, God, it was a different time. You know, he was so brilliant at what he did.
And that incredible phrase, wasn't it? There's no such thing as a red states or the blue states, just the United States of America. And what did you think? You thought this is a future president?
Honestly, that day, I thought this man, and you must have thought that too, Alan.
The whole room felt that too.
I think the whole room felt a great sigh of relief. We are going to have a president Obama.
But Nick, I thought you were just queuing into a message from Obama there.
Well, I know, yes.
Let us down the garden path there a little bit.
He's far too busy trying to work out the Biden issue.
Alan, just tell us what it was like in that convention room.
Well, it was kind of weird because, you know, there was Kerry and it was all the swift boat drama and people were saying he wasn't a Vietnam hero, and so he came up for his sort of keynote speech and went, "Ready for duty," like that, and the whole place went, "Ew." Everyone was like, "Oh, that was," but before that we'd had this incredible, inspiring person, so it felt like we're all rallied and thinking the future's going to be great, but the present's not going to be so good. So it was this weird, bittersweet moment.
Now, another big moment for you. Wind forward 18 years, and there is the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, and you fronted a series of Newsnight outside broadcasts, they're known as OBs, around Europe, and then you ended up in Washington, and I think what that showed was, how do we put it, the perils of live TV.
Yeah, I hopped over to Washington, and Mark had already done a couple in Europe. So we're in Washington, we've got a pretty cheap jacked up OB with the White House in front of us, and a very, very small crew. A cameraman was also a sound man, and a desk, and me, and guests. And there was a short film going on, but I was about to interview this heavily pregnant, wonderful Ukrainian MP. She was trying to sit on the stool. He was trying to put her mic on, and I was hearing in my ear, "It's 30 seconds, it's 30 seconds, it's 20 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds. I said, "The cameraman, you've got 5 seconds to get back to your camera." And I heard this thump, and he fell at my feet under the table and stayed there for the duration of the rest of the programme. I had no idea where the camera was on it. I mean, it was extraordinary. And this Ukrainian MP, who was wonderful, just sat there going, "What is happening?" The cameraman is under the table.
And no one knew because you're
This is the most amazing thing about you as a presenter, amongst the is how incredibly cool you are under pressure. Because I've been on program. I mean, the whole Washington studio went down when Gavin Esler was presenting, and you ended up. I was down in Westminster, and the whole thing was falling apart around us on air. But you wouldn't, from your face, you would never know there were people screaming in your ear.
And to prove Martha's point, let's take a look.
Well, the Ukrainian MP, Alessandra Ustinova, was in America when the invasion began and has remained here to give birth. She has criticised Joe Biden's State of the Union address for its failure, as she sees it, to protect the Ukrainian people adequately by instituting a no-fly zone. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Under that table is the cameraman.
You did see her eyes kind of down for a second, didn't you?
But super cool, you know.
And do you know what Kirsty says every time when things perhaps don't quite go to plan? That's live TV.
It is live TV, and you just can't get too hung up
you
about
are,
it.
honestly,
no, I don't want to say enough, please.
No, but honestly, as someone who started on the programme initially as a producer, came back as a reporter, you are one of the biggest inspirations, not just to anyone who's worked on the programme, but to generation after generation of people who've worked on this show and beyond as well. And shall I tell you what, the weird thing about Kirsty that Nick didn't mention, right? This is not an industry that is necessarily known for its kind words. And yet Kirsty's probably the only person I know that no one has got a bad word to say. And that is despite the fact she has a waspish sense of
What I want to ask you is, you were political editor for 10 years. Tell me about the importance of Kirsty as a pioneer for women journalists.
Well, absolutely. So interesting watching the interview that you did, Kirsty, with Margaret Thatcher, because I think that was the interview that really made your name. And there's so many women presenters now, you have to look back to then. There were barely any women on television. On Newsnight, the only women who were allowed on, they were called the Newsnight wife, and they used to read, it was called the News Belt, the news headlines. So Kirsty burst on air with this irrepressible energy and intelligence, and it really, really made a great difference to women. And, because we're embarrassing you like crazy now, and I'm loving this, you were so kind to me personally, because I was political editor, but got a chance at being a presenter, terrified, I'd never done anything. And Kirsty took me round to a studio like this and explained to me how all the cameras worked, how to speak when the red light is on. And I said, well, Kirsty, will you tell me if I do anything wrong? And she said, just don't pick your nose. And I didn't. And that was the first time you hadn't picked your nose. That's such a good tip.
She never said that to me.
Now, this is such a great chat. We're going to run out of time soon. Alan, the importance of Kirsty, a huge figure in Scotland.
Kirsty, you're a ledge. Like, you're so beloved. You know this, but I hope, I'm just going to say it again, for everyone in Scotland, you're, as a woman, as a Scot, as a cultural and political icon, we love you so much, and you've just done so much for our country, and you're just a nearly swore, but
I would like
alleged.
to say that when I started doing you on Dead Ringers, I mean, there was nothing really to take the piss out of because you were so bloody good at everything. I mean, you know, Newsnight Review, all the kind of arts documentaries and stuff, that investigative, you know, the menopause documentaries that you did before anybody else did, and all across the news. So we had to do these, you know, the silly song lyric, you know, you scumbag, you maggot, you cheap, lousy faggot, Merry Christmas, your ass, I pray God it should last. More in that story later, because that was the only way to make you funny.
Now, we are so lucky tonight that we've got two Kirsty Warks. But I do have to say that I'm rather confused, so I think I've got to issue a sort of an Eamon Andrews, this is your life challenge. Would the real Kirsty Wark take back control of this programme?
Thank you very much. Well, I mean, that's all from me. It has been an honour and a blast. Thank you to all my wonderful colleagues, equally wonderful viewers. Keep on switching on. Victoria's back on Monday. Until then, good night and good luck.
Yeah.